gentlemen, I'd like to call the Wednesday, February 6th Public Health and Housing Committee meeting to order. Roll call of members. I'm Ken Kinsella, Chairman. Alderman Ridgewitz. Alderman Musgrove. Alderman Martinson. Here. Alderman Carpenter. Here. And Ms. Tialdo. Here. Thank you. We also have Bob Sabo and Roger Barfield here, and the mayor's here tonight too. First of all, I'd like to ask for a motion about the approval of minutes for January 2nd meeting.
Move to approve the minutes. Second.
Moved by Alderman Martinson, seconded by Alderman Musgrove. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. Recognition of guests. We don't have any presenters as such here, but I would ask that this would be a good time for public comment. Because we are an actual working committee, we would appreciate it if you could keep your comments down to three minutes or so if possible. We'd also appreciate that you give some thought before you get up here so you don't tell us stories, okay? Thank you. Is there anyone who'd like to address the group tonight? Yes, sir.
Just, why don't you go through what the changes are going to be to the ordinance that was tabled first so we know what to comment. In other words, you tabled an ordinance that was going to be passed last Monday night. And you made some revisions in this proposal. You know, how are we supposed to comment without knowing where it's gone to?
Okay.
That's fair. I think the question is, if anybody else have any other comments or questions not pertaining to the ordinance?
I do if we could open public participation after we discuss the ordinance, maybe.
Is yours about the ordinance too?
Yeah, if not, I'll go now.
Okay, the ordinance is our third item on the agenda. There is no old business that I'm aware of. Under new business, the 2112 Housing Department Annual Building and Development Report. I think that's 2012, isn't that right? We're 100 years old. Okay. Discussion of proposal to sell 10 city-owned properties. You should have a list of those properties here. Is there anyone in that group that did not get one? Yes, sir.
Just so everybody knows, Mr. Sabo and I and Linda Fields and other staff members went through this. There are some properties that are on our list that are forbidden to sell because they were purchased with FEMA money during the flood buyout or certain things, so there's provisions that they cannot be sold. We reviewed this. There are some properties that we have that we're anticipating possible, talking with Royce Carlisle, maybe some future sewer work that we may need. We may need to work on those properties in that area that'll help us because we happen to own them now for some reason or another. Demolition, a fire, or something, we inherited a lot or whatever. So what we did was went through the list again this year, and these are being asked tonight to allow us to put those out for, if somebody wants to submit a proposal on these, sealed bid on these lots, or properties. And we determined that these here right now, some of them are not meeting our lot size, but some of them, the neighboring abutting property owner maybe has inquired in recent times and would like to have it for additional yard. Bobby, do you have anything additional about the, I know you're relatively new to this procedure, but there's some set of standards that the committee will have to review when they get the proposals.
That's correct.
So.
Would you go over the process a little bit about how they're advertised and how
We advertise them like we do any other bidding process. Eric will put together the packet. They will be advertised in the appropriate manner by law, they will. There are a few cases where a couple people have been calling repeatedly, asked that they would be notified, or at least a phone call when the bids were going to go out. with the council. There's been a couple people who are neighbors to this property who are interested. The council adopted years ago that the council has the right to accept or refuse a bid
Okay.
because we don't want to see someone purchase a piece of property. In a couple of cases, that might be a spike strip between, the connect. So we're not out to create more problems. So we will review that and we will listen to their reasons why they want the property. And the committee will do that when they get the bids, the sealed bids, and they'll open the sealed bids here in committee in front of the public meeting. So they'll be opened up in front of the meetings. And that's pretty much what I can tell you. But Eric and the staff and Linda Fields will go through, getting them advertised and getting them the information sent out.
So do we notify all contiguous property owners or just those who are kind of on record?
No, we're not, because it'll be posted in the paper, it'll be posted on our web, it'll be posted publicly, several notices at the library and other places in the city as we always do. But I don't believe it's not like a zoning case, we don't necessarily. But if a few people who have called repeatedly and said, will you just please notify us, we might have a couple of notes in the Economic Development Office or in the Housing Office that, we will notify those folks that the proposals, the bid packets, have gone out if you're interested.
And is this generally something they get like 3 weeks notice after it's published or?
We're probably going to set it 30 days.
I think for 30 days. Yeah.
Thank you.
Kenny, you got a question over here?
Oh, yes.
Is that like the two, we're talking about, is that like the two that was published in the paper, I think it's today, I got it up, Wednesday, February 6th, the two houses that the city's acquiring that they'll be selling?
I'm not familiar with today's, what's in there, I don't know what.
It's,
Does it give addresses?
City of Belleville, yes, one, and I don't have what they're, one is on Smith. 117 North 9th Street and 1812 East Bell. Do you want?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that yet.
That's not through the city?
City of Belleville, a municipal corporations thing that versus, and then it says the names. That's why I was doing it. I wasn't familiar.
I'm not familiar with it either. I mean, I'm not sure where this is.
I wasn't sure to understand this.
Well, this is coming from the 20th Judicial Circuit. This is coming from the courthouse. This is a court notice. Both of these, this is verse. We're versing these people here. This is coming from the circuit clerk's office. I'm not quite sure what the matter's about, but that's not about us selling property in our list. That's about matters of the circuit clerk.
But the city will, I guess, it
Well, the city's been named in this case, in those cases, but I'm not sure the particulars. So,
just ask.
The list that we do are all empty lots, is that correct?
I think there are about 8.
Probably places that we're
Yeah,
not.
there's no houses
All
in these.
the photographs are attached to it.
Well, I saw, oh, I didn't see the photograph, I beg your pardon. I did see the assessor's thing.
Right.
So do we go on what we consider a reasonable bid then on just the land value?
In previous ads, I know it was $500 minimum is what it started at. And
Okay.
people are also supposed to include what their intent is with the
And that's part of
property.
the ad, explaining that.
Correct.
Yes.
And then when it's brought to the city council, they can either accept.
And understand, right now, we're mowing these properties. We're constantly, so if we can get somebody and put them back on the tax roll and get a neighbor or somebody to butt it and increase their lot size and take over the maintenance, we've done a good thing. But we've had to, we have to continue to look at it, because like I said, there's some of them in our index that we have stipulations. And some of them we're just not quite, because of some things we might have pending, we might think it's still a good thing for the city too. But we try to put, X number of them every year out there for sale. We're not trying to bank property.
Right. Well, those are good.
No.
Yes, Alderman Hart.
You said that these are put out for sealed bid, is it not just more, is it Is it better for the city if we were to do like a live auction type, like if you did at the county level with the tax properties?
All I can say is we've never done it that way. We've never decided to get that involved or take on any extra cost of an auctioneer or anything else. We've done it this way for probably, well, Charlie, since I have been on the council, so probably close to 14 of my 16 years, we've been selling some of these occasionally because I was on health and housing for the first 8 years of my alderman terms. But I think it's just that this has worked and they continue to do it this way.
One other thing, when we had our meeting with the city attorney, there is a different
Oh,
process.
I'm sorry, you're right. Okay, the new law. If we sell anything through a real estate agent or by an auctioneer, we're supposed to, the state now says that we are supposed to get an appraisal, pay for an appraisal on each and every property first. So that incurs a whole other expenses, but if we do it by this process, then we have the right to waive that procedure. And that just came out, probably, I think, relatively recent. That was a change in the law and not too distant past.
Ms. Long?
Can you give us a general idea? Are there sometimes more than one bid for a property?
Yeah, you could have. You could have. And I think that's where the clause in our agreement, in the ordinance or the policy, whatever we have, is that, the committee and the council must determine what is the best, the best use of the property. Like I said, if there's a neighbor next door that's wanting the property, and then there's a guy 2 blocks down the street wanting it, we gotta listen and weigh that out. And they're supposed, like Bobby said, they're supposed to explain, if somebody's just gathering up lots and they're not even from around here, we have the right to say, this time we don't want to sell a lot.
I just wonder what happens if you have the neighbors on each side of it.
Well, then I think they have to explain, what's what. I mean, and then sometimes then we put it back or table it, you got to look at each situation individually and see. But we have been successful to sell many of them. There's not been confrontational. Most everybody's walked away, has been happy. It's helped them out, and the city got to get some of these back on the tax rolls, etc. So, I mean, for the most part, the procedures have worked, but it's not to say we can't run into a unique situation at some point.
That's one of the last advertisements that we got, I think, back in 2005, the last sale. That was full suit.
Yeah, we looked at them a couple times the last couple of years, and we held off because of, the biggest reason we held off for a while was the sewer, the mandate from the state EPA with the sewer stuff. Until we had it all figured out, we knew we were going to have to buy a lot of properties in different places in town with sewer projects. So it didn't make no sense to sell a lot for $500 and then turn around and have to pay a couple $1,000s for an easement. So this is the first time in a while we've done this. But we've gone over this list with Royce and Andy Burke, etc., and they felt that these properties that we have proposed here tonight aren't in harm's way of those projects. But this is a sale, notice of sale, and it lists them, and it talks about bids for the purchase of the above described property are hereby invited and will be received by the city clerk at 101 South LI. Said proposal shall be addressed to City of Belleville, Care City Clerk, and shall bear the legend proposal sale of vacant property lots. And it talks about that bids shall be included a detailed description of the use the bidder will make of the property and detailed specifications on how the bidder will improve the property. It goes on, but we can give you copies of this too. In fact, we can, email it to them wherever you want. That's good. I hadn't seen it recently.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Carter, or Alderman Carter.
What's the total sale amount on all these properties? Do we have the figures?
We don't establish the price. The price is done by secret bid.
Okay, so these are being auctioned?
No, because he just finished saying that if we auctioned it, we'd have to have it appraised, and that would be an extra expense.
What about the corner property on the Tower Plaza? Was that not listed as a value? Just says 0.
Those were all St. Clair County records from the tax division.
The corner property there on Tower Plaza, it's kind of a unique deal. that road was changed, its alignment. And actually, the owner of the property on the one side did all the work, did all the landscaping, did everything. And honestly, until he recently went to look at building a garage, he really believed it had been deeded to him, because that was kind of a substitute of some of the right of way he gave up when they moved the road over. And we did that so we could sell another lot across from him and get another lot in there and bring another business to Belleville. We told him that, right now, the last thing we could do, because we don't have, Mr. Malloy's no longer here, we don't have any specific documentation, but when they asked me, I said too, that was deeded to them. Well, we found out it wasn't deeded to them. So I'm sure that particular person is going to bid on it, but he's been cutting it all these years. We've never cut that lot. He took care, he landscaped it, etc. But the property never did get, that deal never did get worked out with him. So he's prepared to make a proposal on it.
So, it's two parcels, but, is it listed as one, or I'm a little confused, there's two different properties?
Emily, on that there, that's one, it's now one property, right?
I believe it's one.
I think that was dealt with.
It's just there's two parcels, I don't follow exactly. One that ends in 5030, the other one's 5028.
And that could just be the way it was split that time, when they put the road, they moved the road over.
Okay.
You have to look at it. But we can get, if you want to get back with Emily tomorrow, she can study it.
So, because it's being bid, is this corner property being auctioned, or?
It's going to be bid, it's going to be off the bid.
Okay, I got you. That's all.
Yes.
Alderman Hayes.
Mr. Chairman, I haven't had a chance to go through all these. A quick question for staff. Are there any of these properties that just by the basic dimensions, nothing would be able, a house or nothing would be able to be built?
They would have, there's a couple of that they would have to get a variance, request a variance. But in some cases, the person next door, has bought them in the past because they know the lot's too small for another house, but they want the additional lot for their yard. They want to secure to increase their yard.
Your Honor, or staff, or Mr. Chairman, if nobody would bid on these, have we ever entertained talking to the adjacent property owners and just vacating half to one, half to the other?
I think that's been done in one particular case. Understand what we've done with a lot of these lots, not a lot, but one a year for the last how many years. This council you all have donated them to the high school program where they built new houses. So that's where we picked out each year for a number of years, a sizable one that was buildable, and we've donated it so that they can keep that program going and put another new home on it. So we've done a host of things. I think we did what you said the one time. There was a couple people that really didn't have a lot of money, but they agreed they would each like to, and I think we split one. That's been a number of years ago.
Yeah, because I'd be supportive of that, just to get them back on the tax rolls and all those just maintain that.
We're trying to do that, but like I said, we slowed up for a while because, like I said, with this $88 million sewer project over the next 15 years, we knew that there's a lot of different parts of town we're going after easements and right-of-way. Now that we got the plan pretty well in place, some of these we feel comfortable in releasing.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, sir. Alderman Carter.
What, are we putting this in the general fund? Are we earmarking this?
No, it's not earmarked. It goes back in the general fund.
General fund, okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Could we have a motion to proceed with the sale?
So moved, Your Honor.
Alderman Carter moved, seconded by Ms. Diallo. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I mentioned just briefly the annual building and development report, but I should have stopped and talked about it. We just received this tonight. We should have it now. I would not expect any action on it because it's informative. Perhaps we could look at it and comment on it next time we have a meeting, since it is going to take some time to look at it. It's just that we accepted it. Okay, at this time we're going to be discussing the ordinance amendment to Chapter 33, Belleville Property Maintenance Code by amending portions of sections thereof, 33-2-1, occupancy permit required. One of the things I think the audience would like to know is what is new in this current one that's being proposed. Mr. Stable, do you have a comment?
From the previous amended ordinance that was submitted, myself, the mayor, and the city attorney met to discuss some of the concerns that were brought up at the council meeting. And from those conversations, it was decided to amend that ordinance that was submitted. And the sections that were changed from the previous one that was submitted, 33-2-1, occupancy permit required, Section A remained the same, and a paragraph was added stating a permit of occupancy shall not be required for visitors to a dwelling unit. It shall be the burden of the owner and tenant to establish that an individual is a visitor and not residing in said dwelling unit. That was created to take the concern out of when a visitor or temporary resident, shouldn't say resident, but temporary person through illness or whatever situation may be, enters the dwelling unit. The other section 2, under 33-22, application residential, both A and B remain the same, and section C was eliminated on the birth or adoption of a child. So it reverted back to the previous original certificate of occupancy permit, where the individual will have to come in and list any new occupants to the residents.
Okay. Any question?
Yes.
Is this something new?
From the previous submitted amended ordinance, that was in what we had proposed previous. This section was the same.
But it
We
is
added
new to the ordinance.
to the present ordinance, correct.
Can you explain that, please?
In section A of 33-2-1, occupancy rate required, the last sentence was changed in that. I'll go ahead and read it. And it's, it shall be unlawful for any person, owner, or agent thereof to occupy or use or to permit the occupancy or use of any single or multifamily dwelling unit for any purpose, including movement of furniture, equipment, or other personal property into said premises until an occupancy permit has been issued by the code official. The certificate so issued shall state the occupancy complies with all the provisions of this code as far as can be determined by visual inspection of the premises and a review of the record. Now, this last part, that was still under the old ordinance. This sentence was added, and shall also identify the individuals authorized to reside in said dwelling.
Okay, that's new overall. It's not new to the last proposal we had, but it's new compared to the old ordinance, okay? At this time, I'd like to open the...
Mr. Chairman, before we do that, you have the list there, and I can do it if you want the one, the flag on it. Can I get it? I'll take a break a second. I don't know if everybody, did everybody get this? Some of you out there, did you get this? Or we'll make more copies. What's that? Which page? It was the one with the city flag from housing office. Yeah. I want to note, down at the bottom, I'm going to start in reverse. I want to read the paragraph at the bottom, first of all. The requirement of the identity of the occupants. If the city does not identify occupants, the city will never know who is authorized to reside in a dwelling unit. And it effectively means that an owner/landlord could constantly move in new tenants without obtaining a new permit of occupancy. As long as the number of occupants remain the same, the result would be that the city would never be inspecting the property for safety issues for which the property maintenance code was primarily adopted. Now, if you go back up to the top, it talks about the occupancy permit, and the relationship of the individual occupying a dwelling unit is required for at least two reasons. One, to make sure that the individuals constitute a family as defined by the zoning code so that there is no violation of the zoning code. The copy of the definition should be attached. I think we got it here if you didn't get that, the definition of family. The requirement of the second part is to make sure that children are not residing in a dwelling unit with someone other than their parents for the sole reason to attend Belleville schools. And that was another part that was put in there many years ago because the taxpayers were potentially being over-inundated in some of our schools. So this sheet here has been around, these definitions. Bobby, this has been around forever.
Yes, correct.
This is not new, but I think sometimes the explanation has not been, shared or not been out there to everybody to read or have. This original ordinance was passed in 1988.
Correct.
So we've had occupancy.
July 18th, 1988.
Okay, thank you. I knew I was close. And the other thing is, I think just to be, we know for sure that Fairview Heights and Granite City and O'Fallon all have occupancy permits. We know for sure that Fairview Heights and Granite require names. I'm not totally sure about O'Fallon. There was some question about that. And Lebanon also has an occupancy permit, but unknown on the names on the, we couldn't get that final answer today. So there's at least 4 of the communities we checked with today that we're not dealing, and I believe, somebody in the room can tell me, St. Clair County, unincorporated, has occupancy permits. Is that, anybody know it for a fact? It is correct. I knew I was correct, but I didn't call them today. So, I just want to make it clear that, it's not like Belleville's doing something, different than others, and it's not like we're doing something, this is brand new. It's been in existence here since 1988. If I may, Mr. Chairman, before we open up discussions and include others, Chief Clay and I talked today, and he couldn't be here tonight because he's on a panel for that heroin discussion at the high school. But he's asked Lieutenant Icecamp to come. And I would like to, if you're okay, ask Lieutenant Icecamp to take just a second and talk about the police perspective for a minute on how occupancy helps them do their job.
Hello. I've recently did a stint in detectives for about 9 to 10 years, and during criminal investigations, we different things come up in our investigations. And here recently, within the last year or so, when we investigate something, let's say for instance armed robbery, we get a lot of statements and we get a lot of information that pinpoints different residences. If we're looking for a certain subject and it comes back to a residence where, say if we're looking for a young male who's approximately 15 years old and it comes back that someone on the occupancy is 60 years old, that's kind of a flaw in the case. Well, with the occupancy now that we have, there's names on the permits, and that aids us in investigations in some instances. For instance, we had a lot of armed robberies recently where we pinpointed a house. There was one subject on the occupancy permit, but we learned that there was some gang members from a joining community that was using that house as a flop house. If they would have abided by the laws and used the occupancy code, we could have more easily identified those individuals. The detectives have done a great job on identifying these people, but when you have overcrowded conditions at a residence, when people aren't on the occupancy permit, sometimes in my experience it festers crime. It has individuals coming out of the residence, walking the streets, doing certain acts. Not in every instance, but in my experience, there's been numerous instances when we have overcrowded conditions that it festers crime in certain communities or certain areas, certain districts of Belleville. But basically, on the occupancy permits, in reference to law enforcement, on many occasions we use those as a tool. And it's not every residence we're looking to see who's living there, but when we get information from citizens, there's many aldermen that I've talked to that have had problems in their wards, and they'd come up to me and say, hey, this is a problem house. We think that there's criminal activity going on in this area. On occasion, we'll look and see who's actually in that area that may be responsible for that. For instance, if we have a house where there's an elderly couple and it's young kids, we know that's not the house. But if they're using a flop house, just letting anybody live there, that's an issue where occupancy helps us. And in essence, it makes Belleville a safer place when we have names on these permits because it allows us to do our job much more easily.
Thank you. There's also a section here, because we're talking about what parts are new, there is an addition to 33-2-4, which is almost exactly like the other one we talked about. The other last sentence there is, the only individuals authorized to reside in a dwelling unit shall be the individuals listed on the occupancy permit. And that's basically the same as the front one said, that they have to have a list of everybody in the dwelling unit.
Explain that again, was that new? I didn't catch the first part of what you said.
Okay, under, do you have this?
Okay, I found the sentence. Are you saying that's in addition to the?
Yes, that was not there previously.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, even on, okay, at this time, I'd like to open the floor for questions. We'd like you to go to the microphone, announce your name and address. Yes, sir. I'd like you to keep it to 2 or 3 minutes if you can.
I'll do my best. Rick Brown, resident of Belleville. I'm a member of the International Code Council. I've been also asked in the last week to be on the board of directors of the St. Louis Metropolitan Equal Housing Opportunity Council, and I have accepted. You know, in the United States, people have a fundamental right to privacy. And yeah, it might be easy and simple for the police department to know every single name and their birth dates and whether they're on St. Clair housing at each address in the city. Make it probably a lot easier to find criminals. But, you know, there's some other things to think about too. You know, a few years ago, we had somebody at the housing department down on South Illinois Street that was stealing money. They didn't take cash down there for a long time. Now, maybe a person like that could go through some of these files and get name, address, birth date. If there's copies of other papers down there, might have some other information on there and get some credit cards issued. You know, it leaves something open for mischief. Okay? And it may be, now, if you're going to do a criminal investigation, I say get a search warrant or get a warrant from a judge to find out who is living at a certain location. Now, you can find out the owners of the properties by going to the courthouse. Now, maybe it's another step or two. But we don't do that in America. You know, people have a right to privacy. We shouldn't have to put our relationship, you know, and I guess, you know, use the zoning ordinance, you know, of what the definition of a family is, you know, by blood or marriage or whatever. And I mean, you know, that would probably keep 9 unrelated people on its own from living in a residence and turning it into a boarding house. We all know that. You can't do that. I mean, I think some of your fears are that there's going to be all these boarding houses all over the city, and you got enough laws in the books that already address that. What I really have a problem with is that you've concocted this, and I say you've concocted because the 2006 Property Maintenance Code doesn't have a square footage requirement for individuals. Now, there is a way, and it's subjective, that the code official can determine if a place is overcrowded. And I think everybody knows that situations where you have a 10,000 square foot house and you have 2 people that are absolute slobs that live there, and that 10,000 square foot house isn't big enough for those 2 people. Yet at the same time, we know that there's little 1,000 square foot houses in Dawn Heights where for years there was families lived there that you had 3 bedrooms. You had the parents in 1 bedroom, you had the girls 2 or 3 in 1 bedroom, and you had the boys 2 or 3 in 1 bedroom. Wouldn't fit under this code of the square footage. I mean, there's different ways that you can look at the square footage issue. You know, that what you're putting on is a per se square footage that you pulled out of a 17-year-old code that the International Code Council has thrown out because there was problems. And when you put these names on here and you're counting, you're going back to this, one size fits all. I mean, you could have let's say under your code, it takes 100 square feet for 2 people to be in a bedroom. Okay, what happens if those 2 people weigh 400 pounds apiece? Is that the same as having 200-pound people in a bedroom? No. I mean, you might as well just as easily use weight instead of square footage to determine occupancy. It would make probably just as much sense. But see, the problem you're getting at, and the problem with the groups that I am affiliated with, the International Code Council, who wrote the code, experts. This is what their job is, writing the code. And the EHOC, the Equal Housing Opportunity Council, they don't want discrimination. And everybody can't have it both ways on this thing. And since this isn't going to be any different for whether it's a rented dwelling or an owned dwelling, you're going to be telling people that own a house that they can't have more people in it than what your square footage allows. And you can't just, you have to register these people, and put them on this list, because this is what we're going to end up with. This was printed in the News Democrat. 12:03 p.m. Violation of occupancy permit. 500 block of blank. Christina blank, 24, and Lisa blank, 45, were arrested for violation of occupancy. Both were issued non-traffic citations at the scene and released with a notice to appear. Now this was a mother and a daughter. And the daughter, the mother was visiting for whatever, how long, and the police officer comes in there and says, well, I'm going to give you a ticket because you allowed your mother to stay here. And I'm going to give your mother a ticket because she stayed here, because that's both violations of the ordinance. We're giving tickets to people, residents, for staying in a place. This particular place had an occupant load of 12. We're even near the occupant load, even according to your standards, which are not correct. You have, here's court testimony out of a case where you have, and this is right from the transcript. The question was from the attorney, okay, what were the events leading to the ticket? And Officer Seibel answered, we went to the house on a complaint of people living there. There was too many people living there. As I pulled up in the driveway of the house, there was a black gentleman sitting on the stoop of the house. I introduced myself and asked him his name. He told me. I asked him if he lived there. He told me yes. And then here, another question. Well, is there any other information you'd like to share with the court regarding Mr. Blank, who was the guy on the stoop? Yeah, and Officer Seibel says, other than I told him he wasn't allowed to live there because he wasn't on the occupancy permit, told him to leave. Now, this is a police officer in the city of Belleville being the judge, jury, and executioner to somebody who just has to be sitting on a front porch. Now, we don't need this kind of stuff in Belleville. We need people that are going to come to Belleville and are going to live. Now, there's ways to fight crime without putting it in this ordinance. The occupancy code is a safety ordinance. That's all it is. It's no more, no less. It's no less than the plumbing code or the electrical code. It's about safety. It's not about crime. The 10 or 15% of the cops that are on the street that are sent around, and I got bunches of these tickets here too. I got over 700 of them. They writing tickets to people for hanging around with somebody at home. And whether it's over the load or under the load, that doesn't matter. What does 10 or 15% of the police could be used to fight crime. Now, I know it's real easy, and it's, a cop isn't going to get hurt or shot at by going to a person's house and asking them what their name is and writing them a ticket for that. Hey, that's a cop getting an easy bit of duty. It's harder to fight crime where somebody may be shooting at you, but that's where fighting crime is. It's not this kind of stuff. And, Belleville has a horrible reputation in Illinois. All over the country.
Mr. Brown, could you begin to wrap up?
I'm going to try. Yes, sir, I will. But we don't need this kind of stuff. I mean, we've got, and then you're going to use these square footages again, with the names of the people on, and I dare say that every single inspection that is done by the inspectors in this city is undersized by 20 to 60%. Every single one of the properties that I lease out is undersized by that much. And it's also undersized by how many people that the housing office says is allowed to live there, which generates a ticket. Now, you're using false information, and since it's only a matter of multiplying length times width, I think it's the policy, I personally believe, it's the policy of the city to undersize dwellings on purpose. Because there's no other explanation. Anybody can have a calculator, and anybody knows how to measure a room. You know, so it's going to make criminals out of a lot of people, throw a lot of the police force into asking people's names, and personally, it's none of the city's business who I sleep with, or their name, or what their birthday is. They're not going to send me or her a birthday card. Why do they need that stuff? If the police want information of a dwelling, you get a judge to issue a search warrant. You can come to the house if there's a complaint. Better be a valid complaint, because if somebody comes to my house and says, I want to see inside, or I want to ask you some questions, I'm sorry, goodbye, and if you don't leave, I'll have the cop arrested for trespassing. There has to be criminal activity. And we're just, this is a great city. We're the laughing stock because of this kind of crap. And I know there's places where you have, 19 people in a house and shouldn't be. There's other ways to deal with that stuff. But
Thank you, Mr. Brown. We appreciate it. Thank you.
okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Victoria Wygant, 605 South Pennsylvania Avenue. I'd like to stand up for the codes, and one of them would be, as an example, let's say Joplin, Missouri. They had a horrible tragedy, and it was hard to find the bodies. It was hard to find the people. So if we have a national tragedy like that in the city of Belleville, and we don't know who's living in their homes, how do we know who's deceased from this national tragedy? Another thing would be with the fire department. My daughter experienced a fire at her house. I think it helped the fire department to know who was dwelling in that house, because then, if there would have been 5 more people there, and they would say 5 more people, they don't know who they're looking for. So, oh, well, we have, some bones here, but we don't know who the person is. I just think for the health and safety of our city, we need to have these permits, and all the cities around here are doing it. Johnny was just telling me in East St. Louis, they've had one, occupancy permits longer than we have. My husband works for St. Clair County Housing. Look up theirs, because they have square footage, they have an amount of people that are allowed in a room, and there's a lot of strict ordinances with the St. Clair County Housing Authority. So I'm just telling you, do a little bit more research on who else has what around us, because you're always talking about Belleville. Belleville's a great city. I think if you don't like it, get the hell out.
I've got one along the line.
Excuse me, sir. You've had your chance. Thank you. Yes, back in the corner, please.
Stuart Manor, 318 South 29th Street, Belleville, Illinois. I'd be hesitant to use East St. Louis as an example of anything other than a hellhole. About Lindenwood University, I just wonder, is their occupancy permits the same? They don't have backyards anymore. The entire backyards from 23rd Street up to 26th Street is nothing but gravel parking lots. They got gravel parking lots in the back and on all sides of the buildings. And sometimes you can go in there and there's 7, 8, 10 cars back there. And I just wonder, when I went to college in Carbondale a long time ago, they stuffed 8, 10, 12 people in one room. We had 39 students living in, this is off-campus housing, and it's a fire trap. But we had 39 people living in one big house, 8, 10 to a room, and I just wonder if Lindenwood stuffing that many as many kids as they can in those houses they got. With the amount of cars parked back there, it looks like there would be overcrowded at least. And these Lindenwood cops, they're just a bunch of rent-a-cops, and they drive these golf carts all over the streets and everything. There's no lights or nothing on them. You know, if a private citizen gets caught driving their lawnmower on a public street, it's liable to get arrested and have his lawnmower impounded by hauling. It costs $300 or $400 to get it out. Is Lindenwood getting special privileges?
You done? Emily and I and other staff have been working with Lindenwood. Prior to Lindenwood having a university in this town, we never had anything in zoning pertaining to dorms. We're working on things right now. I'm meeting with them again tomorrow. Lindenwood is following standards, but they have growing pains, and we're writing some new codes to be adopted. They'll probably be breaking ground on a dorm real soon. Believe me, the fire department has been in touch and in review of Lindenwood's housing challenges and opportunities regularly. And we are certainly, and they know, we're very concerned and cognizant of safety. So, but in answer to your question, we're still developing a few new rules, Stuart, for the simple reason we never had a university until just a couple years ago, and we never had a day school until about 2 years ago, and now we got dorms, and it's a nice problem. So we're working through that, and they will have standards too, and they're following now. We're working with us. We're not. We have them. But I'm just saying, you know, so don't think, I know, Stuart, you have some hard feelings with Lindenwood, but we're not, we're working with them. We're not out to get them, but we're certainly not going to let them slide with no safety standards.
I got only one question. I'm the only, out of all these criminals in Belleville, I'm the only criminal, I guess, that doesn't have access to go to one of their football games. I'm banned from going to one of their football games.
They are a private university.
I know, but all these other criminals can go to the football games.
Well, Stuart, that's between you and Lindenwood, and they've made the determination.
Okay, Mr. Chairman? Yes. Is there anyone else who, yes, back there, sir?
Good evening. My name is Walter Hood Jr. I live at 5 Herman Court, Belleville. The only thing I think you got to keep the occupancy rules, you need to toughen them up a little bit. There's an apartment property on the other side of my house for roughly 70 units, and they're one bedroom. I know it's more than 2 people live in those apartments, each one of them. So I think not only you got to keep the rules, you got to toughen them up a little bit. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Michael?
Michael Hagbert, 701 Centerville. I've attended the past couple of legal and ordinance committee meetings, and I only recall there talk about the baby paragraph of this. What committee submitted the wording to the paragraphs that we have remaining? Was it health and housing, or did it come from the legal and ordinance?
Actually, when we sent this to the attorney for legal and art, from legal and ordinance, he included it.
So he made up the first 2 paragraphs that are remaining.
Is that a proper way of stating this, I guess?
He added to section A of 33-21, he added the bottom paragraph, if you have a copy of the ordinance, and then he deleted section C of the 33-22, dealing with the...
Okay, did he do the 32, the -2-4?
No, that's still, 33-2-4 is still there, and that was from the
Correct.
previous...
Which committee submitted that, is all I was saying.
That one came with the original, and that went through health and housing and went through legal after it was submitted by the city.
Because I just don't remember it. I haven't seen anything on health and housing agendas or minutes in the last 3 months that have discussed it. So, the changes that are being proposed, are they going to be retroactive, or are they only going to apply to new permits being issued?
I would think they'd only be new permits, I would imagine.
The people who were grandfathered, for example, if you lived in your house for that's before and nothing's changed, then you're okay.
Okay.
But if you start to, add a bunch of people, then you need to come up and get an occupancy. So that could be the first time, that might be the first time you've ever had an inspection, or anybody come even just to measure square footage or whatever, But Ken, for example, and I talked about this, he's been in his house 40 years. He's not gonna be on file for an occupancy permit yet. We're not,
Correct.
we don't have the staff to necessarily mandate, but as changes come, or as new people come in, they're adding these, right, Bob? That's the way it was adopted in '88.
Actually, when the last proposed amendment, the only thing actually new was the birth of a child section. That would have changed the way we proceed at the housing authority. Everything else is staying the same. It has, everything that's in here, we already do. We require name, address, date of birth, and relationship on your occupancy. So that is nothing new. That's always been.
Okay. What I'd like to do is I'd like to get your questions finished, then I'll call on Alderman. Okay.
Okay. It did come down to the question, I moved in, I purchased my house before the occupancy permit. If somebody were to move in, then do I have to then come down and apply for an occupancy permit?
That's what I would do.
If my son moves out, do I have to come and update an occupancy permit or get one at that time?
If there's ever a change in the occupancy, yes, you do. And that was even in the original ordinance.
And then I would have to also get an inspection just for...
If it's been over a year.
Was it just deleting a name?
No, not if it's adding or deleting.
If I'm just adding or deleting names, then I don't have to. But if I purchased my house before the ordinance was enacted, do now I have to get an inspection?
I wouldn't think so.
You're talking about the present?
Yeah, like the chairman, it's like, I've been in my house since before the occupancy.
It doesn't require an inspection.
Okay.
Just, if you were gonna add the son's coming back home, we would probably require a bedroom measurements.
So that would be an
If
inspection.
somebody else if somebody was gonna come and live with you, you've never gone through the inspection process before, then that would require us to come out, do a bedroom measurement.
Bedroom measurement
Only.
You wouldn't look at any other part of the house or comment on anything? Okay, and there was also commented that...
Thank you. Excuse me, Terry, would you identify yourself for the record so we have...
Yeah, I'm Terry, I'm with the code enforcement
Thank you.
inspector.
It was commented that one of the reasons for this is that a landlord could be moving new tenants in and out without ever obtaining a new occupancy permit. That could easily be solved by just asking the existing tenants to see the copy of their lease that they have, and if it doesn't agree with the occupancy permit, your problem's solved. You still don't need to know who's living there. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes,
Mr.
Alderman
Chairman,
Hall.
I could not get your attention before we started this public participation.
Okay.
But as a member of the Ordinance and Legal Committee, I am appalled that this has come before this committee in the shape that it is. This has substantially changed from when it passed out of Ordinance and Legal so that it is pretty much unrecognizable. I want to ask you to please table it from this committee and send it back to Ordinance and Legal where it belongs with this amount of changes. You have removed paragraphs, you have added paragraphs, and you've added sentences.
We're doing the second where we're comparing these.
So what we went through is,
Okay, so the only things, there are, two things
what
that
we
are different
covered,
than
what
what
we covered earlier was the only difference that went through the health and housing, the ordinance, and then
When you get done figuring that out, I didn't hear the roll call of the members of this committee.
I called roll.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we're here. Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to comment?
Excuse me, sir.
Oh, excuse me. Okay,
Motion on the floor.
I would not oppose that if you wanted to, but it's my understanding this committee can, if somebody wants to make a motion, they can move it on to the council. But I'd remain open to sending it back to ordinance because.
And we talked about it, Mr. Chairman, but if you go back to the minutes of the meeting and what I said that night, when we tabled it.
At ordinance or?
No, at city council.
At council, okay.
I said that we would, staff and the city attorney would meet, and then we would have an open public advertising, make sure everybody knew it, that we would have an open session at Health and Housing before it came back to council. Now, that's what was said at that time, trying to be very public inclusive and let everybody know, and we came to the bigger room here, so we had more time, and it happened to be that Planning Commission was canceled tonight, so we're not rushed for time. So I believed, and we believed, that we were doing everything in accordance. We made it clear at that time it would be discussed and reviewed by the concerns that were shared that night at City Council, and it would then be brought back to this public forum tonight. You know, like I said, if this committee wants to send it back to ordinance again, it can, but I think Bob and Ken have both made, you know, a thorough job of pointing out the changes that have been adjusted. And you know, I mean, we're not, this wasn't done, I mean, it was done as we stated. Staff and legal would review it, and it would come back to this committee for public to listen and have input. And that's what's going on now.
Yes, sir, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
I'd like to say something.
Sure.
First and foremost, I want to properly introduce myself this time. Lee O. Griffin, 305 North Charles. I'm very concerned about this, and I would like to have a moratorium on it. I'd like for us to table the matter, and I agree with our Honorable Ward 2 Alderman, Ms. Holt. I personally have been stockpiled with housing tickets. When I went to court, approximately June the 5th, the Honorable Judge Katz said that these ordinances was very vague and unclear. She didn't say it was unconstitutional, but that was going to be the next words, I believe, coming out of her mouth. I think the benefits do not outweigh the unconstitutional infringement here on people's rights. You have officers over in the housing department, and let's, for the record, state, it's an all-white good old boy club over there. It might not be a racial issue, but the proprieties, it looks like something's wrong. You have an African-American population here of damn near 33% of this population. We don't have no black code enforcement officers, no Hispanic, or no people lower income working in that department. So whatever you guys decide, it's going to be taken with a grain of salt because it do not represent the community as a whole. Mayor, I've had discussions with you about this. I had a situation where they're stockpiling tickets on me. We're talking about the manpower and fighting crime, but we need to try to come up with ways to resolve crime. I've got 10 tickets right now stockpiled. Might have some more tickets that hasn't been heard. And the officers over there telling me, well, we got 18 months to write you a ticket, Mr. Griffin, if your attendance is inappropriate. People don't like me because my reputation precedes me. I'm a fighter. I believe in doing right. I don't see color, and if I do, it's incidental. I've been running the mayor down since June, September, trying to get a decision on a citizen complaint that I filed against the officers. I mean, I've been running you down about my concern about the citizen complaint that I filed October 29th. When we had a meeting, I asked for a decision. I asked for there any more tickets that these officers under the guise of code enforcement have written against me. I haven't had a decision. I'm a taxpayer. I deserve a decision. So if you keep giving these guys all this autonomy over there to write tickets, if we don't get no integration over there, the problem's only going to get worse. I talked to Clay. Wait a minute. I talked to Clay about my complaint. I said, sir, when are we going to act? These officers kicked holes in my doors. Nobody wanted to investigate. I've been very patient. I don't want to be a pest. But you're talking about people's lives here, infringing on our constitutional rights. Let's integrate the place. Let's get some diversification. And then if it comes forward with some issues, then we can resolve it. But right now, we have all polices over there. We have polices that can set the stage for inspectors. If one inspector don't like you, or one officer don't like you, nobody's gonna like you. So this is not adequately, so it's selective application. If they don't like Lee Griffin, thumbs down. If they like you, Mayor, thumbs up. They'll give you a free ride. And that's the problem with this stuff. We need to just stop, bag up, take a serious look at this situation. I understand for a police tool, this is good in certain areas, but also it can be infringing on people's constitutional rights. Again, I've had complaints filed. My citizen complaint October 9th saying officers came to my house, went in different locations and told people don't rent from Lee Griffin. I had nothing to do with that incident at 621 Clay Street when those officers came out there with a landlord because the water had been turned off by the landlord, constructive eviction situation. His name was Levin Whitey Leonard. He turned the water off because he couldn't get his tenants out. The cops came in and said, hey, we got a problem. We're here to get you out of here, regardless of what the circumstances. So this is opening the door for people to circumvent our due processes through evictions. But until we get some people over here, I don't care if it's Hispanic, if it's Asian, but when you got that white, good old white clubs there, people that want to run amok of this thing, they will run amok. So I say, please table this situation until we can take a serious look at this situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Just let it be known, Mr. Griffin, and we've had many good conversations.
Yes, but nothing's happening.
But you're saying that the good old white boy club. Now hold it. You spoke. Okay, but let's make one thing clear to the audience. You're upset that you haven't had your complaint heard, and your complaint has been in the hands of Chief William Clay and Captain Moody. And are they white?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, but my point is, you're making a statement. I've appointed.
They're in housing. They're black. They're African Americans, but they're not over there in housing.
Okay.
Let's look at the housing department.
Okay, excuse me. We've had enough.
You got the director, Sable, retired policeman. You got assistant manager. Barfield, retired, one of the best detectives, have nothing but respect for him. You got 7 inspectors, white. You got part-time inspectors, white. You got reception, you don't even have a black paper pusher. But you want to infringe upon these people or low economics with all this bull sugar, and you don't want to represent. You don't want to look at that situation over there and get some people of color over there. And until you do that, the ACLU want to be looking at you, Equal Housing Department, because Belleville has a history of don't want to be inclusive when it comes to minorities, of people who's not of their party affiliation. So we got to wake up and learn to work together and be inclusive. And then I'm for whatever you guys want to do. But I pay my taxes. When I walk over there, I want to see some African Americans, some Hispanics, also female police officers on this force even. And then we can have a level playing field here.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Never mind.
Is there anyone else? Yes.
Joy Schreiber, 27 South 10th Street. The house that I own, I purchased from the Orlet family. They raised 9 children in that house. By occupancy permit code now, I can only have 6 people in there. About 9 children, 2 adults, that's 11 people. Plus, at that time, they had a portion of the house segregated out as an apartment. So nobody, I don't think, in this room is going to argue that the Orlet family is a good family. They did not live in unsafe conditions. I think setting a limit on number of people is just wrong. Bob White said it well at the last city council meeting that in villages in foreign countries, you can have 20 people, individuals in a very small home, and it can be cleaner than some homes with 2 people in it. And one thing that bothered me tonight a great deal was it was said about defining family. My daughter and grandchildren have recently moved in with me in October. I put them on my occupancy permit, and my granddaughter now attends Henry Robb Elementary. She's got a very good friend there, a classmate that lives with her aunt and uncle, not her mom. Her mom is a crackhead. They have finally adopted her, but there was some time that she lived with her aunt and uncle and went to school from their home, not as their child, as their niece. Because it was a better place for her, a safer place for her. So you need to be careful with the verbiage you put in any kind of ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Bob, I know we didn't spell it out because it's in the thing, but one of the things we've agreed or talked about we are going to adopt or bring forward is what's in the code in 2006 about an appeals process. So in our discussion this past week, talking with the city attorney and staff, it's in the code, and that's why we didn't rewrite it in the ordinance, because it's already there, because we adopted the 2006 code. We do feel, we do agree that we should have an appeals board for any appeals that would be brought forward. We do plan within the next 30 days or less to get that mapped out and bring that forward to, well, probably we'll bring it back to this committee next month. And we will have some recommendations as to how that should be incorporated, because I do agree that should be honored. The other thing I just want to correct, and I think Bob, you let me, we talked about this. Yes, it's true that the 2006 code does no longer have the square footage in it, but we did adopt and we maintained the 2003 code, right? So it's not 20 years old, it's the 2003 code.
Half of it out.
And it was though adopted at that time.
I understand that.
Okay.
There's a couple of things I can add.
Okay, well, you had a long time to talk. But I want to clarify, you said it was 1990 something and it's not.
Okay, excuse me, sir, excuse me. But we gave you, by my notes, you have 11 minutes, and that's more than anybody else. Please, thank you. We'll talk to you after the meeting if you'd like. But you've had your fair share.
I did have my fair share. Somebody would maybe yield me a couple of minutes.
No, I'm not going to do that yielding minutes, sir. That's not going to happen. Close public participation. And do the alderman have any questions? Yeah. I've already answered you, sir. We'll talk after the meeting if you want. Excuse me. Thank you. You've had your chance. Thank you.
Well, you need more information, Mr. Kinsella, and that's it.
Thank you. Yes.
I have some questions. Do any of the panels have the original ordinance when it was adopted in July 18th of 1988 to the current? My questions are, I could not find in here when they made up the 2 farms, which have changed, and the fee. Now, I have the fees of when the occupancy permit changed, the inspections changed, I have all that. But in the original ordinance, there is no mention that you will charge $25 to add a name. Now, I would like to know why this farm is different from this farm, what the difference is, date of birth, and the $25 fee that a person had to pay to add a name.
You raised that question a week ago. I did a little research. We couldn't find it either, that it was written
So
that
we
way.
were just
Now, hold
charged.
it. We come to determine that for whatever reason, housing years ago had a policy of charging it. When I became mayor, shortly after I became mayor, and Jennifer Gain took over as the director of housing, she came to me and questioned this, and I agreed with her. And the policy, because it was not an ordinance, was changed back to where there was no charge for a copy of the thing or for adding a name. We were not, but I'm just telling you, we could never find, and so it was a policy that administratively we said, we're not sure where it came from. It was there for a number of years, but we dropped the charge probably back in 2005. Is that when we decided about? 2005, the summer of 2005, shortly after Jennifer Gain became housing director, she came to me and said, I can't find anything. She talked to Mr. Sprague at that time. There was nothing in the ordinance, and we determined that it wasn't fair. And what was really happening, a lot of people were coming in to get copies for school and different things, and we weren't out to try to burden families like that. So we dropped the charge back in probably August of 2005. And I can't speak to how it ever got started or who did it. I can't speak to it because
But shouldn't it have been in the ordinances?
it probably should have been, but I wasn't on the council in 1988.
Why is the difference of the occupancy permits different from this one to this one? We have 2 different ones, and it's not in here. Should that not have a copy and then attached to this?
Alderman Schneider, I'm not going to disagree that there's been some changes over the years that are not documented well, when exactly they were changed or what the intent. I don't disagree with you, there was a change made. I did have some say over dropping the fee that was never documented why we had it. So my administration dropped the fee. And we dropped that practice. But I can't tell you any more than that because I don't know. I wasn't there. I've never worked in housing per se.
Well, then I think, as Ms. Holt said, this should go back to ordinance and legal, and the changes should be approved there. Then if it wants to come to this committee, fine. Because it's just another thing rushed through. That's probably what happened here. It was rushed through and nothing was documented.
Alderman Hayes.
And I would like to see if the newspaper would run a story to see how many people did pay it.
Alderman Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First thing I want to state is I certainly support the change of dropping item C where it's stated previously in case of any birth of child cause of change in occupancy that basically people have 1 year. I appreciate that being dropped. But I'm trying to still get an assessment here, Mr. Chairman, because I've said before, we've got an ordinance here that is mixing home-owned and rental. We're trying to fit one shoe fits all. And I want to remind the people of this committee that when this country and the Constitution was founded, Thomas Jefferson first wrote, pursuing a life, liberty, and pursuing of property. Life, liberty, and pursuing of property. He changed it later to happiness. This country was founded on property rights. And I'm still trying to figure out, because we've got piecemeal ordinances here, maybe Mr. Sable can answer this, because if my home, if this ordinance goes through, if my home is deemed, and I'm grandfather too, I've never got an occupancy permit, and I've lived in that house my entire life, since I was brought up in the hospital in March of '64. Now, if you tell me by square footage that my home can only hold 4 people, and my family, I got a brother that lives down in Tampa, Florida, and their home gets destroyed by a hurricane, and they have nowhere to go, and my brother and sister-in-law, my niece and nephew, which are also my godchildren, want to move here, and the square footage only says 4 people can live in my house, and now that's going to be 2 + 4 is 6. What's going to happen?
According to the way the ordinance is now, it would be permitted. However, there is an appeals process that is going to be instituted, and you can take that to the appeal, and they can.
So according to the ordinance now, where I own my home, and I've bought the home, and a home is the biggest investment that anybody makes in their life, and we're going to add an appeals process. It's going to tell me that my family, which, by the way, my brother grew up in that house too. And by the way, Mr. Schreiber, I knew the Orlets very well. Yeah, they had a good Catholic family. Probably, you know, our family wasn't, we were Catholic, but we didn't have the 9 children. We only had the 4. But if this has been going on, then these are things that I don't think, Your Honor, the only good thing that's come out of this whole process is we're exposed to the public things that I don't think they even knew. That the people, families can't live together in a home that's owned, and we are in the process of what we're doing now. I've heard the health and safety issues, and I understand that. I understand that. But when you're talking about a home and a person's investment, and they own that home, And now we're trying to tell a family what's the best way to raise their family. There's other laws and ways to entertain if somebody is not raising their family in health and safety environment, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor. And furthermore, it seems, as other people in this audience have pointed out tonight, we are turning this also into a crime use mechanism. And I fail to see the logic of this being pushed when we also have, at this very instance, a crime-free housing ordinance that's in the process. And I think it makes sense to table and stop what we're doing here until we get that going, because we're right now taking, we have ordinances that are taking the rights away of 98% of the people because of 2% of the people causing the problem, and those 2% are causing the 98% of the problem. And to me, we are going about it the wrong way, and I'm going to ask this a question again, and I believe this nice lady here who's an appointed member to the board is involved in realty. So if I buy a house from her and it only has 4 people that can live there, is she going to be obligated to sign a disclaimer, a waiver, telling me that now, even though we've dropped this item C, we've dropped it, saying that you don't have to go down there within a year, but what you're still telling me, Mr. Sable, is it's illegal.
And Mr. Hayden, Alderman Hayden, to your proposal as far as dropping, I'm assuming dropping the occupancy thing. You say 2, okay? 2 in your residence may be reasonable, but what if you want it 4 or 5 additional people? We use this as a guideline when we do our inspections and do measurements, and we use this as a guideline for our occupancy permit, okay? You want 4, 5, 6 additional people? What is going to be the limit? How are we going to cut off how many we can say that you can have?
If they're, and I'll answer that, if they're, to me, if they meet this definition of family, I just have a hard time with government telling somebody that owns their home how to run and raise their family. And I'm just telling you that this lady's selling me a home, and the square footage only says 4 people, and now and we're expecting a baby. Is she going to have to tell me, well, by the way, you're going to be illegal if you have that baby? I mean, these are, I guess the bottom line I'm saying is we're going to do 2 things about this if we continue this. One, crime is already forcing people out of the city of Belleville, and I think we need to focus our resources on that. And 2, this kind of Mickey Mouse stuff is going to be the last nail in the coffin trying to sell a home in the city of Belleville. We're failing to plan and prioritize the resources.
Your Honor?
Okay, first of all, many neighbors have contacted me when I was alderman, and many of you, who are good Belleville citizens, like we are all saying we are here tonight, and they have been the ones that have called and complained about the overcrowdedness in a home near their property, where the overcrowdedness has been to such an extreme that it has made them so fed up, they want to move.
Were they owners or rentals?
It doesn't make a difference.
Yes,
Now hold it. No.
Yes,
No.
Yes, it does.
We have some owner-occupied homes that also can be an extreme violation of occupancy and can also be a nuisance to the city. Not everyone, and you hear about one, I'm not going to give an address, but you hear about one here on the council floor on a regular basis. They own the home. And you know which one I'm talking about. It's in, well, it was near Ward. I guess the redistricting has changed. But my point is this. The chief and I and the whole entire command staff was in my office again today. If we don't have the occupancy component then the whole thing about the crime-free multi-housing, as Chief Clay says, is pretty much out the door. Because that component is very much a key essential part to the crime-free multi-housing the formula. Now, hang on. So that's a thing that Chief Clay asked me to convey tonight. But I will tell you, you talk about crime, Alderman Hayden. When you get a home, and I'm not saying in all cases, I know, I delivered papers to the Arlets as a kid. They were on my paper route. I'm well aware. But I think we know too that today's standards, and we've gotten a little bit over the years, we've looked at safety. We didn't have the fire codes, and we didn't, years ago, back in the 60s, we didn't have an occupancy limit on buildings. And if a nightclub wanted to have 400 people in it, but it was only big enough to have 100, nobody stopped them. But we've learned over the years, after some bad experiences of people burning up in fires, that we had to go and have occupancy in businesses as well. So we've learned over the years. Now, I will tell you, there are an awful lot of people calling my office, and I know other aldermen, who are very concerned about the effects of getting rid of the occupancy code, because I think crime and concerns about some of the neighborhood deterioration would be a major. We've never really advertised, and I don't disagree, the Board of Appeals needs to be implemented. It's there in the code. We went back and studied it. We researched it. Fine. We can do that. But we're not here to be unreasonable, but you have to protect. We don't want good neighbors leaving the city because when you have overcrowdedness to that degree as some places are experiencing, you have more cars, more traffic, more trash, more people in the yards, more people outside. And if a house is a small little house and there's 5 times the number of people that house is equipped for, it negatively impacts the neighborhood. And that does happen. It is happening, and that's why this city council back in 1988 adopted at that time. Now, the other thing I want to tell you, we're not voting tonight, potentially, or tabling tonight. The occupancy code is still in place. Unless you're going to propose that we abolish it, we're only talking about making it, I think, more reasonable, taking out the part about the birth, listening, and really being more, making sure now that you understand that we agree there should be an appeals process. But I think we're not talking about, are you talking about getting rid of the occupancy code?
Absolutely not. I'm talking about the fact that you stated that these problems, we've got problems, and I agree with you, Mayor, we've got problems, but we're trying to one shoe fits all, and I don't think we're making it more reasonable.
Have you talked to the police chief about the occupancy code?
Yeah, I've talked to him before, and about the issues, in my discussions with him, Your Honor, the concerns of the overcrowding and causing elements that are happening outside those homes where the police are responding. It is irrelevant whether they're on the occupancy permit or not. If they're outside causing a disturbance, disrupted the neighborhood, it's a crime, and they need to be arrested. And that's part of what the crime-free housing is to set standards to reasonably force those people out through.
Well, I can tell you, the Chief Clay today,
90% of those are coming from rentals, Your Honor. But and 90% of those rentals are coming from 10% or less of bad landlords.
I don't have all those statistics here to say you're right or wrong, but I do know that there are definitely some owner-occupied situations that are still very much a problem.
And all I'm saying, I'm not trying to say that we get rid of the occupancy code, but I don't believe that there's a lot, even the people that support what we're trying to do with the overcrowding and the disturbances in the neighborhood. I don't even think some of those people realize that right now their home is in essence grandfathered, and they're basically living in violation of the code, and don't realize that if they needed to bring grandma to come live with them, that they are now in violation of the current ordinance, as you said, from day one. And I think we've got a problem there, Your Honor. We're trying to do a good thing, and we're putting a lot of people that don't even know that they may be in a bad thing.
Well, I firmly believe watering down or eliminating the occupancy permit will not help us one bit deal with problems in the neighborhoods or deal with crime.
I agree with
And
that.
so I don't see why we want to talk about getting rid of or diminishing it, watering it down, when we admit that some neighborhoods are having challenges, and this is a tool, and this is an opportunity for us to work on and help identify situations that may be causing extreme pressure on neighbors, good neighbors, that suddenly now want to throw their hands up and leave their neighborhood.
But creating a further red tape.
We're not creating, we're actually, this proposal, Alderman Hayden, is lessening it, right, Director Sable?
Yes.
I mean, we're not creating it. We've had this law since 1988. We're actually being more reasonable. We're coming forward here, and we're amending it to be more considerate. So if you're wanting to get rid of it, then I firmly disagree.
I'm not trying to get rid of it. I'll go back. Ms. Holt, you're very much right. I agree with that. I think it needs to go back to legal and ordinance, because there's a lot of things within this proposed ordinance tonight, Ms. Holt, that your committee needs to look at, as well as some of the existing things that maybe have been on the books since 1988 that need to be corrected, so we can start treating the right people in the city, the good people in the city, with the respect that they deserve, and let's start focusing our efforts and our manpower and resources on the few people that are causing problems in this city, and then do whatever we got to do to move them out. But let's not put the good people and start treating them as if they're bad people. And like I said, Your Honor, I think there's going to be people very much alarmed to find out that they're possibly living in a house that their grandfather in and don't even know it, and don't even know that if they bring their children's grandfather or grandmother to come live with them instead of putting them in a nursing home, that they're in violation of the law, or they're going to have to go get an occupancy permit or another inspection, or we're going to create a bureaucracy of this appeals process. We just got better things to do.
Alderman Hayden, do you recommend that we have occupancy permits for renters but not homeowners?
Go beyond the bounds of what this discussion is.
Well, that's exactly what the discussion is, ma'am. That's exactly what
I'll
the
answer your
discussion is.
question. I'm telling you that there is different rights for a homeowner, yes.
I have my
Absolutely.
hand up. May I speak?
Well, I haven't called on anybody since. I've seen your hand, and I haven't called on anybody else. I'll give to you this time. Yes. Mr. Hayden, continue.
You better believe it. I do believe that there is a difference in the way this should be handled, absolutely. Because a homeowner has more rights. You don't, I'll ask you a question, Mr. Chair. You don't believe that a person that owns their home has more rights than somebody that's living in a home that they're renting?
I believe that that's a question to ask the attorney.
Okay.
I do.
I can answer that question.
Thank you, but no, sir. We've talked to you enough. Thank you.
I've got some
Now,
answers for some of
you
your
had your
questions.
hand up, Miss.
Would anybody on the committee?
Excuse me, sir. We have done this before. You have done this before, and you've had more time than anybody else. You have had your chance.
The last person spoke.
Excuse me. Alderman Schneider.
Yes, I have two comments. One is with his, the realtor here. Are you going to disclose this in any of the new sales, and not only realtors, landlords, when they rent, so they know that they cannot bring anybody in if it goes over the occupancy? What if you sell this house, somebody puts the money down as a down payment, they don't tell you how many people's moving in, and all of a sudden, you've had closing, they go to get the occupancy permit, oh, you've got more people than what's allowed in that house. You've got your loan, you bought the house. What is going to happen then?
In most cases, I'm not gonna say 100% time, but we usually do a house inspection before the sale of a house. And at that time, we give them a sheet of paper that shows the occupancy limitations in that rent.
But what if they put the money down on it already? They don't get that down payment back because they're defaulting on the sale of the contract. So it should be in the contracts when those realtors show a house, it should be told, or asked, and they'll just have to be nosy. How many people do you plan on living in this house? Is that gonna be disclosed in the contracts?
I know the houses that I bought, I always had a house inspection done prior to.
I'm not saying a house inspection for the violations. I'm talking
No,
about,
I'm talking
I
about
go buy a
the
house.
purchase it, yes.
There's many ways that people get their refund of their earnings.
Well, it should be put
There's
in
other ways
the contract up front. And my next question is, I would like to get a copy of the crime-free housing. Or we're gonna have the same thing we have here right now tonight. Nobody's gonna know anything before it comes before the meeting.
Alderman Richards.
But did I get my question answered? Wait a minute. I did not get it answered. Am I going to get a copy of the crime-free housing? Because that's all what it boils down to with this too is the ordinances.
That hasn't been finalized, to my knowledge.
Mr. Flynn's got the crime-free housing. He and the chief have been back and forth about some things. And we will be given out to the aldermen in ample time before the 27th.
When you say ample time, is that 1 day, 2 days before?
I would say, I'll give you this, I'll say a minimum of a week, we'll get it to you, okay? He had several meetings, we're looking at it, reviewing it, it's been back and forth, there's been some input, a few minor things that they've tweaked, so we'll get that to you, that's fine. Mr. Chairman, I think, I'll recommend, because this is not, we have an ordinance in place.
Can we hear, Mr. Chairman, can we hear from committee members?
I am a member of this committee.
Okay,
I
Mayor.
am a member by law of this
Chairman.
committee. And Mr. Chairman, may I finish?
Just go ahead.
I would recommend, because we're not, this administration and this staff is not trying to push anything through here. We have an ordinance in place. We were trying to move this forward because we believe it makes it more fair and workable. Go ahead and send it back to ordinance committee. I don't have a problem with that. I don't know how much more the question is, and I'll make sure at the ordinance committee, I'll make sure the police chief's there, and I'll make sure he's there that night and voices to you what he voiced to me in my office. And I'll be glad to invite, we can invite other people if that's what you want. But my point is, we're not trying to ramp it, but the ordinance is in place. By leaving here tonight and doing nothing, don't think that the occupancy ordinance is not in place. It's been there since 1988. And I would recommend that while adjusting it is what we're proposing, but I would certainly not recommend that we abolish it. I think that would be a major mistake for this city.
Mayor, can I add one thing? The proposed ordinance, the first one that went through, the amendment went through Health and Housing first, then it went to the ordinance committee. So this is the first course of action for this amended ordinances to be approved by the Health and Housing Committee. Then it goes to legal and ordinance. And once legal and ordinance passes it, if they pass it, it goes to the council.
That's fine.
So
That just tells me.
Alderman Richards.
One of the main concerns that I get from my constituents is
Could you use the mic?
In and out of different homes and never knowing who lives there, and who's coming and going. And that's one of the main concerns in my ward. They're afraid, they don't know who's living there. Are they too many, or what are the people that are there? They're kind of cause trouble. I just want to say that that's one of the main concerns, and some people have called me today, and they want to, they want to get a good housing thing, but they feel more protected.
Are there any more members of the committee that would like to talk to us?
I concur with Alderman Richards. I've had the same concerns. A lot of people coming and going to some rental properties. I have some statements. I think that there are a lot of concerns about crowding, of course, what I stated, and safety of children should be a number 2 concern. And this goes back to the city court process. If we had a city court for housing, when it comes to family members, I think that could go to the appeals process. I think the whole appeals process could take place in the city court for housing. People that are arrested for unlawful occupancy, that could take place in city housing. It could, alleviate a lot of problems. But, I look at this as a local census taking. I understand some people's concerns about protecting people's identities, and perhaps, perhaps certain things should only be like somebody's, how old they are on occupancy, the age. I don't know if maybe it should be for eyes only for the city workers to verify, looking at IDs to determine that they are that age and just write down the age. But the city probably needs to have birth dates for fighting crime, so we know exactly who people are. So it's a mixed thing, and but as far as regulations on the amount of residents per building by the government, I think this is nothing new. I think this is resurfaced, going probably back to Roman times, allowing a certain amount of residents per building. I think this is nothing new. The landlords of rental properties, I think, should have some weight in determining how many people they want in their residence. I don't think it should just be up to the city. I think landlords should have some type of, agreement with the city over certain properties if they only want a certain number of people per, it's their property that they own. But as far as the earlier arguments about determining the amount of square footage, how many people should be at the square footage, this is not on the agenda tonight. We did not come here to discuss that. I understand Mr. Brown's concerns, but like I said, that would have to be on a different meeting and agenda. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else on the committee have a comment? Alderman Hull.
Remind me, 88 was when the original occupancy was okay. And the purpose of it at that point was safety or crime?
I honestly can't tell you what the council's direction was then. I wasn't on the council.
Okay. Were recordings made then or just minutes?
No, there was no recordings then, I'm sure.
Alderman Richards.
Around that time she's talking, I remember answering many calls when we would go to apartments and where there'd be 15, 20, 25 people, and they'd be fighting and drinking, and we'd have to break them up, and they all lived there. We couldn't prove that they lived there, but they all gave us that address. And that happened more than once at many of them. And I think that probably brought in, and they started doing something about it, that we'd have some kind of power, that when we got to a residence, and there's a whole bunch of people in there, and they're fighting and causing trouble, that we had some kind of ground other than to try to just walk away from the situation where we didn't know who belonged there.
Thank you. Is there anything else from the... Okay, we have some choices. We could have a motion to approve this. We could have a motion to approve and send to ordinance. We could have a motion to send to ordinance. We could have a motion to table this. Would someone like to make a motion of some sort? Sir?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve this ordinance. Is there any discussion beyond what we've already done?
Go ahead and send it straight to the city council floor.
The attorney says we can send it straight to the council floor. Those that made the motion, do you want to send it to the council floor or send it through ordinance on the way to the
I just want to
council?
respectfully point out, Mr. Chairman, that we're bypassing what was just pointed out by Mr. Sager, that last time it was approved by Health and Housing, then went to legal and ordinance.
We'll send it to the council.
You still want to send it to council? Okay. The attorney tells me that that is legal. Okay. So an A would mean that we'd approve this and send it to council. A nay would mean that we would not, and we'd go for another motion. I guess I better do a roll call. Bear with me a moment while I find the list of names. Alderman Ridgewitz.
Aye.
Alderman Musgrove.
Aye.
Alderman Martinson.
Aye.
Alderman Carpenter.
Aye.
Ms. Tiallo, excuse me, I did it again.
To clarify, we are not sending it to ordinance, it's going straight to council.
This is going straight to council, is what the motion is.
Nay.
And the alderman, the chairman votes A. Mayor?
I'd say aye because of the simple reason we clarified at the council meeting, we come here, have review with staff and the attorney and come back to council because it was tabled there with that statement, so I will vote aye.
It passes, ladies and gentlemen.
Did everyone in the audience tonight get a copy of the ordinance if they wanted one?
No.
Did you get one? Do we have any more copies, Bob?
I believe it is.
If he's got a few more copies, come to Mr. Sable, because you certainly, and we, if it wasn't added today, because we're doing some construction with the website, remind me, Bob, to see if Sharon can get it on the web tomorrow. So it'll also be on the website with these proposed changes, okay?
May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Alderman Martinson, seconded by Ms. Tiallo. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you.